Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source. Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
"25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Nice looking day out there. I don't see anybody wearing any heavy coats. It must be nice out there, Robin.
I think the temperature is climbing.
It's getting better out there, right?
Yeah.
I just did something I don't think I've ever done before with a guest.
What's that?
I ordered the book just now.
Oh, nice.
I went on Amazon and I got the book. It's called 10 Secrets to a Bestseller.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why would I want this book, you might ask? Well, let me tell you why. Because Robin and I are writing a children's book. We've done this before, and we, how do we say? We don't have a bestseller.
No.
I don't. So I want to know how to do this, and I think every time somebody will talk to us about a book, I will go on Amazon. It's amazing how some of them have these really good numbers and others don't, and it doesn't always reflect how good the book is. And I don't mean there are bad books making it to number one. I mean there are some really good books that should be number one that for one reason or another aren't doing it. So those are the ones I think I want to talk about. Tim McConnehey is on the phone. He's the founder of Izzard Inc. Publishing. He's a member of the Independent Book Publishers Association, and his book is called 10 Secrets to a Bestseller, an author's guide to self-publishing. No longer, by the way, has a stigma. Remember you used to call it Vanity Press?
Oh, yeah.
Had a stigma?
For sure.
Tim McConnehey. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Good morning, Larry and Robin. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we are getting, you know, when you go fishing, you get a little nibble. We've had a couple of nibbles from literary agents, so maybe we're on the right track. But we're still thinking self-publishing is probably the way we're going to go.
Yeah, I nibbles are great. It's good. You know, I saw that you guys dabbled a little bit in publishing in the past, and self-publishing is the way to go. But I think self-publishing by yourself is going away. I think building a great publishing team is where it's going to.
Tell me about that. Explain what that means. And where are you, by the way? Where are you located?
It is in snowy Salt Lake City today.
Oh, you're in Utah. Okay.
Yeah, your weather report sounds fantastic.
It is really nice out here, but at the same time, we want to, we're anxious to see some snow. It's been a while. Robin's going up to New Jersey in about 2 weeks, so maybe she'll see snow.
Hope so.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That would be perfect.
So what do you mean a team, not doing it yourself? Because that sounds like a good idea. It sounds like, and here's why I think it's a good idea, because we don't know everything. I mean, there's got to be some people who know more about this than us. I mean, we're busy putting together another children's book.
Yeah, Larry, that's a great question. That's actually a reason why I wrote 10 Secrets to a Bestseller, an author's guide to self-publishing workbook. It kind of outlays a little bit of the process behind things. Gone are the days of just posting it to Amazon and letting a book just float out there. You've got 22 million books on Amazon. How are you going to stand out now? How do you know where to go? What do you know? How do you know where to publish? And so that's why we start out with doing your research, figuring out what you want to write on, what are the sales in your genre, and where are you going to go?
Okay, and how? Okay, if there's so many books out there, how does a publisher do it differently than a self-publisher? That's what I guess I'm confused by.
Yeah, it's a little different. I think there's an approach that you can take. What we are is a collaborative publisher. We like to take the best of self-publishing and the best of traditional publishing, where we take our process that we've worked on for years and we mesh self-published authors with the best talent in publishing. So if you want somebody to get a great cover, and you know that covers sell because they do, that's the first thing people look at for the book, and you want to make sure that you have somebody who knows the industry, who knows it well. I remember this is years ago, I was coming back from Honolulu, And I was sitting on the plane. I was just going, what if an airline had the same mentality that self-publishers do? That would mean the same person would be taking your credit card, flying the plane, doing the maintenance, everything.
That's right. Yeah,
and I don't understand the self-publisher thought about, I can do the book myself. There's years of experience.
That's a good metaphor.
That you can just tap into. Yeah.
So what kind of advice do you give in the book that helps us, aside from find a publisher like Izzard, for example? I'm assuming Izzard will be one of the selections.
Yeah, that is one of them. I think it's first is to understand your goals. Too many authors come to us and they don't know what end goal they want to achieve. So, for instance, we were just working with a gentleman who was the mayor of a small town in Wyoming called Evanston. He was there for 35 years, and he wrote a history. We just finished a 5-volume project that he wanted to give to the city as a thank you for the rest, for his whole time there. It's newspaper clippings from 1965 to 1995. And so that was his goal, was to make an archival book.
That's awesome.
A history book for the city.
I'm getting the people in that city probably love that book.
They do. They really do. And it's so if authors understand their goal, it helps create a roadmap to where they want to go.
So let me ask you this, based on what you just said, and what you just said kind of speaks to something I've always wondered about, the niche. If you're going to write to everybody, it's going to be really hard. But if you're writing to, for example, in our town, if you're writing a book about Ocala, you got 350,000 people that might want it because they live here, right? I mean, that to me would make sense.
Yeah. It does, and it's knowing your audience. It's creating what this workbook does is really helps an author create a working book business plan where you see everything from the start to the finish. So as you're planning, as you're going through and writing, there's still marketing steps down the road that you can be working on. One of our big ones is getting 3, 4, and 5 professional reviews. People buy what they're told. What people say is a great book. Word of mouth gets out. And if you pick up a book, where are those at? Well, you need to start planning for that months in advance, so you have that when you get to the later stages. That's why it's important to figure out. Yeah.
So Robin and I work with Simon & Schuster, Random House, Penguin, all the big ones, and many, many, many self-published authors. The self-published authors are anything in the spectrum you can imagine. They can be as good as the major publishers. Their work is what I mean. Not just the writing, but even just the quality of the published book. I mean, it looks and feels just like top notch. But then there are others who clearly needed an editor and clearly needed to rewrite. It clearly seemed like some of them weren't quite ready to be published. Do the publishers that a self-publisher would pay for publishing, do they provide that pre-publishing feedback so that you go through a little bit of frustration as an author, but at the same time you're going to have a better book in the end?
Yeah. How do you know where your manuscript or your book sits? Yeah. When you're writing it? That's a really good question, Larry. What we try and do is get feedback from an editor who's in the industry, who knows what's going on in that genre, and do a manuscript critique. Where are the high points? Where are the low points? Where can things be tuned up? And always, always get an editor. Even if you're just going to do a copy edit at the end, just a proof, even editors need editors. And people will pick that stuff off and they will go, okay, this just isn't quality. I don't want to waste my time with it. There are so many books that quality is key.
And how do you keep the author's psyche in check? Because sometimes when an author writes something, they feel bad when they're critiqued and other things are picked up that they might have missed.
Yeah, no, that's handling the feedback is hard. It's difficult because authors pour their life into these books. And if you go out, you see a bad review come out. We did a book called How to Read the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. It's pretty straight down the middle for both sides of the parties, for Democrats and Republicans. But we knew where that book was going to get picked apart. And it's still tough, but we come back and I talk to the author and I just say, hey, that's just where it's going to be. But on the other hand, we just got a message from a beta program at Amazon called Great on Kindle, and they like your book and they want to put it on there. So, you know, I think there's that old talk of it's nice to be critiqued, and you know you have something when people try and critique it a lot. I think that's kind of how we keep.
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it. How much money are we talking about? How much is normally a ballpark figure for what an author who wants to self-publish? What kind of expense should they expect?
With hiring the best talent in publishing, folks who work at Penguin Random House, who have been art directors, it can be thousands. We just did a book called A Printer's Choice with an author out of Rhode Island, and it is a phenomenal book. He put in a great cover, great editor, interior, and recently last month just got a starred review from Publishers Weekly. And so he put in a lot of money. But you got to also understand how many can you sell? Where's your return on investment? So if you put $20,000 into it, well, how many do you have to sell? 3, 4, 5,000? And do you have a path there? And I can tell you there's no real middle ground in publishing. Either you do it well and it's solid, or you don't. There's very few books on that middle ground that are successful.
And then when you're talking about selling, you're looking at the brick and mortar store like Barnes and Noble, but then you're looking at online sales, which is usually a lot cheaper per copy than a brick and mortar store. How do you gauge?
Yeah, it is, but you want both, in my opinion. You want to be able to meet the reader in the format that they want. So that's where it's been so much easier now with print on demand. The quality of print on demand is really good. If you use a company called Ingram Spark and Lightning Source, both of them give you the abilities to get into 39,000 bookstores across the world. Whereas if you just sit and publish with KDP, which is Amazon Direct Publishing, you're pretty much just on Amazon, and that's it. With our testing, we have found that you need the best of both worlds.
So how do you market it once it's out there? How do you advertise that there's a book? And how important is the first month? I've heard this before, which is kind of why I'm asking. I've heard that the first month is when Amazon is most likely to pick up on recommending the book, et cetera, et cetera. Once it's past the first month, it doesn't necessarily get picked. And the reason that's important, I was told, I'm asking more than telling, is oh my gosh, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, because even though somebody might want to buy a book at Barnes and Noble in the store, they might look at the description and the reviews on Amazon.
Yeah. It's important to get out there and market. The reviews are very important. Building a base to get out to, and getting in touch with your fans and saying, "Hey, go out and leave reviews for me," and do it as many sites as possible is key. Getting a book out and getting pre-press buzz from folks is really key. But I think what is even more key is not giving up. That's actually one of our 10 steps. We have a saying that's called success is mastering failure. If you want to be successful, it's how well do you do when you fail. Do you give up? Do you not?
That's good.
Do you go
yeah.
back to work?
So how do we determine which publisher to go with, which self-publisher to go with? There's obviously the physical, like if we get a sample of the book, we say, oh, wow, this is nice paper. This is they've got great color in the color photographs or in the cover. Those are kind of easy. But what about the unseen things, like what we were talking about, the quality of the feedback regarding the work itself? How do we know which one is best?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really hard because you don't want to get sucked in to the vanity presses are still around. You don't want to get sucked into something where it's just, here you go, you hand us your manuscript and we're going to send you a book. What you want to make sure of is, will they help you with your plan? Will they help you achieve your goals? Do you have a roadmap for where you want to go? And do they talk to you? Do they listen? Do they say, maybe you should try this, or maybe you should try this?
Right.
70% of a successful book we can quantify, and we've done that in the book 10 Secrets to a Bestseller.
And those things you just said, those are things that a publisher that we would know. I don't want to say a real publisher because I don't know that there's a difference anymore, but a publisher who is likely to put their own money on the line. How about putting it that way? A publisher who put their own money on the line, like Simon & Schuster, is always going to be crafting you and guiding, giving you some grooming, I guess, to make sure the book, the product itself, is as good as it can be.
Yeah, and that's what you're looking for. If you're going to do it yourself, you want the best product. You want to make sure you have the accessibility. You want to make sure that you have the people behind you in order to make that happen. See, when I work with an author and I say, let's go get a cover, I say, this is what this cover designer has done. We usually like to give them 2 or 3 choices of people because we like the authors to be in charge. This is their project. They're in charge, and we're helping them build their team. And that's why we give them a few options, not to overwhelm, but to say, what direction do you want to go? I think that's where you're looking at if you're going to self-publish, is build your team and make sure that they have your best interest in mind. Make sure they say, hey, here are your weaknesses, your strengths, and here's where we think we can go, and here's where we can tune things up so you're going to be okay.
Sometimes we have books come across from authors, and on the front of the book they have a Caldecott Award winner. They have different types of awards on the book itself, and it's a first run. How do you get that on there? With us, what we do is we try and submit books to trade review establishments. That's Library Journal, School Library Journal, Publishers Weekly. Those are all the reputable review places. We try and submit those 6 months before a book comes out. And if we can get those, then we can put them on the cover. And sometimes they come a little bit later, like they did with a Printer's Choice. And then we just go through with print on demand. It's easy. We don't have a lot of inventory, and there's not a lot of cost to change it. And we just change it right away. And it takes about an hour to go through so you can upload all the files to the various retailers. And when people go to Izzard, we have an individual person to work with there as the point person like yourself?
Yeah, that's what makes the difference. It's having your publishing consultant being able to say, well, what about this? Or have you seen this? And that's where we'll say, yeah, it's worth it maybe giving it a try. Or, maybe it's not. If you're going to spend $500 or $1,000 to reach libraries, do we think that we can get the money back? Or is it more about getting exposure for another business? If you're a business owner and you're trying to get your establishment out there and your business, then there could be more things at play. And that's where it's nice being able to talk to somebody and them give you ideas as well.
And so this would be the time then, if you have an author there, to submit their works to schools to get on their summer reading lists? Yeah.
Now would be the time. almost looking at Christmas now.
Oh, okay.
I know it sounds strange, but you really are. Most retailers, when we deal with big chains, they want to have that stuff wrapped up in June, July. So planning ahead is really key. Even the major publishers, traditional publishers, their books are 2 to 3 years out. So they know when they're going to come out. They can build it. They can plan.
Robin and I work with a lot of publicists, and I want to talk to you a little bit about how people get to do these radio shows. Robin and I are at this end. We speak to a lot of authors. If you saw the list, you would be amazed how many of these authors are well-known names, and they have huge followings. We always know who has a huge following, even if we're not familiar with the name, because the listeners will be asking, what time is he on? What time, when did I miss it? That kind of stuff. So the phones and the text messages kind of give us a hint that we've got somebody who's got a name, or we just happen to know it. But the question we always get is, how do they get on the shows? And I only know the answer to one radio station. That's us. I don't know how how do you guys get on? We have authors calling in from London. We have authors coming in from Sydney, Australia.
Yeah.
It's amazing. How do they, I know we're just one of many who they're talking to. How does that happen? How does that radio tour thing happen?
You guys have a wonderful show, so I think that's why you guys get a lot of people asking. I like to work with a PR firm myself, and we work with Annie Jennings PR, who does specifically books, and it's proven. She knows the market well enough to get people booked on radio shows. Mm-hmm. That's how I know it. We've had authors that reach out to us, they reach out to our authors asking them to speak. So if they get opportunities on TV or anything else, a lot of people come reach out as well. Okay,
that you just mentioned something, and I don't know if this is where you wanted to go with that, but a lot of the authors have information in books. They're not novels; they're factual, nonfiction, and they easily could lend themselves to the college circuit, talking in front of a group as an expert on a certain subject. Is that person? Does the marketing for that person have a different set of rules than the person who wrote the great American novel?
I think so. We're able to get into their niche better when they know. We've worked with a #1 New York Times bestselling author who is a motivational speaker. His name's Dan Clark. He's gone all over the world, 200 plus a year visits. And for him, our goal is to help him sell his book to his audiences. And when they know he's out, it just kind of snowballs. When they know his book's out, then they can contact him, and then they book him on radio shows, and then they book him to come in person. So yeah, you need to hit it from different aspects. You really do. And you also need a plan for continual marketing.
Sometimes authors will think, I have to write like this person, or illustrators will have to say, I have to draw like this person. But is that a myth?
I think so. I really think that that's a myth, because you want to be your own person. When you start stripping a voice, and this is why we try and put people with the best editors. We want an editor that will lift up an author, not strip away their voice and not take away what they have to say.
I hope we have some authors right now who are listening intently. The one question I wanted to squeeze in was about intellectual property rights, copyrights. How is that done? What's your advice on that?
Once you've written it, it's yours. You have a copyright. You can do whatever you want with it. I do suggest, however, that you register it with copyright.gov or get an IP attorney, just to make sure everything's on file. Sometimes Amazon will ask, hey, do you own the copyright? And it's just easy to show them the form.
Absolutely. So anybody who has any questions, the book is called 10 Secrets to a Bestseller. I found it on Amazon. I think you can get it for free at izzardinc.com. Am I right?
Yeah, you can get the workbook for free. It's an interactive workbook at izzardinc.com. And we'd love to continue the conversation with any of your listeners.
I looked it up, Tim. I'm very impressed with what you guys do. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us today.
Larry, thank you. Robin, it's been a pleasure.
All right, we'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA.